all of a sudden you find yourself in a new space and you're not immediately successful and like you don't get things right all the time, and like you're in that space of now having to build conscious competence to before you even get to like the level of unconscious competence in a new space. That voice is vicious, right? And I think, you know, from a psychology perspective, it's that cognitive dissonance, right? We hold these beliefs and thoughts about ourselves, but then our actions and the results are different. And navigating that, that inner voice, that inner critic can be so nasty. But I think, you know, when we started our careers, you know, when we started walking as kids, when we fell over, we weren't like at ourselves, like we got up and we tried again. And I think that's what we forget, you know. Even if you're the most experienced coach, there's still stuff that you're going to be learning for the first time. You know, you're constantly going to be experimenting with new things.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And we are continuing our series on the coaches that don't suck. So as I was going through my list of friends on the social media, I had to invite my friend Lauryn. So Lauryn is the founder and coach at Laurintium, and she helps mid-career professionals reclaim their careers and build extraordinary lives with over a decade in human capital consulting and change management, including at Deloitte. She blends strategic coaching with organizational psychology. She is so smart. Okay, so Lauryn has guided clients across 4 continents through career transitions and promotions using science-backed methods to transform professionals into leaders and change makers. Hello, Lauryn, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. So here's why I had to invite you. Every time I see Lauryn at an event, and I've seen her at many events, we were in a mastermind together for a while, she really stood out for me because she was one of those people that was like, make eye contact, hello. You know, I had a lot of people would be like, hey, Amanda, and they would like wave, but Lauryn was like, hey, you know, she was so excited to see me. And, you know, we sat next to each other. We took notes together. We were high-fiving through the experience together. And of course, that led to dinner a few times. And, you know, Lauryn is one of the smartest people that I have been at those seminars with. It's just such a pleasure to have you here. I'm glad you were here.
I'm glad to be here. Honestly, it's so funny you say that because there's been plenty of times I'm like, I'm not smart enough to be sitting with Amanda. And it's interesting, right? How we like disqualify ourselves, yet other people have a completely different impression and perspective.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And like, I'd love to unpack that a little bit too. You know, we as coaches, we have to relate and we have to connect with people on a really regular basis. And so I noticed like when I even was reaching out to people who were they're promoting their business, you know, they're online. But when I reached out and I said, hey, do you want to be on a podcast? They were a little reticent, a little hesitant. And I had a little bit of back and forth with you because you were like asking me the smart questions as you should, to just like make sure it was a legit, experience. And I think that is contributing a lot to our experience as coaches these days is like, who can you trust? What's their agenda? You know, are they really here to help? All that kind of thing. So I'm really curious is my first question. Like, what is your impression of the state of the coaching industry, you know, today? We're in October 2024. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. You know, I think when I think about my experience coaching people, it's very similar to what you said. I think a lot of people that are our clients are just like the market feels saturated. You know, it feels like it's saturated with so many different coaches for so many different things. We're hearing more and more about coaching, which I think is really, really exciting. I think as we're seeing, you know, the world develop, particularly with, you know, technology advancements, coaching is just going to become more and more important and more powerful. I truly do believe it's going to be a catalyst in so many places and spaces. But I do think there is that sort of hesitancy that people have because they're tired of being pitched to or sold to like a transaction when what they're really seeking is transformation. And I think you made a good point. And I'd say it's probably the only natural talent I have as a coach is that relationship, that connection. And that's not something that, you can really get to a depth with when you're just focused on the sale and the pitch and what you want and what you need, rather than really tuning into the person and understanding where they're at. What do they need? And it's not about, in marketing, we hear all about pain points and this, that, pleasure points and all that jazz. But it's just who are they as a person? I've had more conversations with people about their kids, their cats, their holidays, it's got nothing to do with the context of the space that we work in, or maybe where they need a solution or change. It's just human beings. And I think the world is craving that more and more, especially as we're seeing more AI come in. And I think that's exactly where it's at for coaches as well. We're being really called to that higher level of human connection.
I really love this. It's so funny because as I reach out to people and I'm seeking connection and I'm, I've got a very open mind about what a relationship could be. That's definitely evolved from when I was an earlier, stage coach. When I was earlier in my business, it was very like black and white. Are you a client? Are you not a client? And one of my natural talents is definitely a hyper focus. It comes with the not so focused, right? It's something that I've definitely evolved into understanding is like, oh my gosh, building a business, especially a service-based business, it really is about building a lot of different kinds of relationships. So, you're going to need, yes, clients, obviously, but also collaborative partners, also people that are going to be referrals, also people that are going to provide services to you, also, like friends, just friends, what a pleasure to be able to just go to dinner and talk about what we saw at an amazing seminar experience. And, I think one of the things that freaked me out as a new coach was actually that relating. So if you were to mentor somebody or tell them, how do you just chill and let a relationship unfold? What would you say are your top 3 tips?
I'm actually going to go I think the first relationship is relationship with self. Because I think we're getting in our way so much. And we're projecting so much of what we don't have or where we feel lack in other relationships onto external circumstances, onto other people, yet it's ourselves and the relationship we have with ourselves. So that would be the first thing.
So good.
I will say it, I think a lot of coaches started a business and then realized, my goodness, we're on a just hyper intensive personal development journey, and it brings up so much stuff. And it's there is no substitute for doing that work on yourself. And that includes the relationship you have with yourself. Because if that's not good, how are you going to go in and be in a relationship with other people and be good?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
The judging, the comparing, the imposter syndrome, comparison trap, all of those things are going to come up if you're not good with self. So that would be the first thing. And I think that's been one of the most unexpected gifts. I thought that I had a pretty good relationship with myself. But then when I look back, I'm like, my goodness, you didn't even know. If you know what I mean? You were so unaware and so ignorant to all of these things. And not by choice, but you don't know what you don't know. That would be my first tip. My second tip is, particularly because we've had, that time in the last few years where we've all been at home, we've all been virtual. I'd say one of the other biggest things is putting yourself in the room, getting back out into in-person, because the relationships that you can build, we talked about it, the difference between having a conversation on Zoom versus us going to dinner and having a chat, getting to be in the energy of someone in person is very, very different to virtual. I will say I'm a big supporter of both, but you've got to put yourself in the room. And I see a lot of coaches where then, and not even just coaches, but the people that I coach that are in the corporate space, they don't put themselves in the room. So it's if you're not there, how do you expect to build relationship? How do you expect to connect with people?
Yeah.
And then I think my third,
That's such a great point. Speaking as a coach based out of suburban Fort Worth, right? Like it is taking a tremendous amount of intention, both virtually and in person, to get in the room, because otherwise I'm in a big house in suburbia, right? Like how do you connect, right?
Right? And I think so many, like particularly in the space that I'm playing in, there's that paradigm where people think, well, my employer should be giving me these opportunities and they should be paying. And it's like, that's not the world we're living in. Like, we have more access than ever before to put ourselves in rooms, whether it's virtually or in person. But we're making choices that keep us from accessing them. And we're blaming a lot of other circumstances. And it's like, well, come back to that relationship with self. Like, what's that belief, that mentality, that paradigm that you're holding on to that's actually, prohibiting you from being somewhere you want to be, that you need to be, that could be the difference that makes the difference. So that would definitely be a big one. And I'd add to that, having an intention when you go into the rooms. I think that's been something that's changed my experience getting into rooms, is going in with an openness and a curiosity, but also sitting with myself and going like, what's my intention for this time? What do I want to get out of it? Because if you can set your intentions, it's going to change how you show up in the room. So for me, my intention and why you and I connected is I want to meet new people. And if I don't set that intention, it's so easy to go in there and sit in my seat and stay in my comfort zone and not go and ask the questions and have the conversations. And that's another thing that I've observed a lot with coaches and clients alike. Even when they get in the room, then they sort of falter at that next hurdle where it's like, well, I'm in the room, but now what do I do? Oh, I've got to talk to people. Like, how do I connect? And that probably leads me to my third point, which is just be who you are. That is something I'm going to say. I look to you for this, because in all of your content and all of our conversations, I meet the exact same person. You are real as real, and you're human. It's not any like facade or bolster or anything. It's just, I get to meet Amanda, and I get to hear Amanda. I get to hear her points of view. I get to hear what she's thinking that day. There's no trying to be something that you're not. There's a level of authenticity that really shines through with you. And I think that's really, really important, only going to become more important. I know authenticity has been that buzzword and whatnot, but I think a lot of coaches try to be what they think they need to be. It's the same with the professionals I coach. They're going into interviews and they're trying to be what they think that hiring manager wants them to be. And it's like, your greatest asset is you being you. So like own that and step into that and step from that place, lead from that place, rather than just like letting all that noise kind of cloud the essence of who you are.
Well, and I really appreciate you, calling out some of my presence and my behavior. And I remember being in the early days of my business and being so scared that I didn't physically look like a lot of the really successful coaches. I had more children than a lot of the really successful coaches. I was more of a woman than a lot of really successful coaches. And like, Lady Gaga has this song, and it's, called A Million Reasons. Like, there's a million reasons for me to go, but there's really just one good reason for me to stay. And I think about that song an awful lot when it comes to being more visible and like making the choices about your visibility, because even if you are being very authentic, I think you're right, that word kind of gets thrown around, but what does it really mean? And I've been working with my clients on getting much deeper into, well, what does that mean? Because sometimes coaches will take, their desire to have high integrity and desire to have high authenticity, and they'll reject the very steps or tasks that would allow the visibility that they are there, that they're of service and all of that. And then, the cited reason is because, well, I don't want to be inauthentic. So, I wanted to come back to like the personal development journey side of things. What would you say has like been one of your top developments that you had to make personally in order to show up as a coach who doesn't suck today?
I would definitely say, like, and I think about it, and what a lot of people don't know is that me starting my business wasn't exactly like an intentional choice. I was in Australia, I was working for Deloitte, and then my husband got the opportunity to transfer to the US. And, pandemic hits, all sorts of chaos with working rights. And so I kind of fell into my business. And I was at a point in my life where I'm now coaching the people that I was back then. Someone who felt really dissatisfied and disenchanted, lost, stuck, stagnant, all the things in the career. And I had no idea when I made the decision to start a business that, even as like someone with a background in psychology, I'm just lifting the lid on the next level of work, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, I think, you talked about the authenticity and the visibility, right? And I remember being back then going, like, just the identity shifts of, well, I was a consultant and I was a psychologist and there's all these labels, but now I'm a coach. And for a really long time, I felt like I had to shut those pieces off because I'm no longer that anymore, and rejecting those aspects of myself and all the beautiful gifts that come with them, because now I'm a coach. And that was definitely one of the personal, probably one of the most intense personal things I went through was, well, who am I? And what am I? And as you said, like digging into that, what's authentic? Because I felt so lost. There's plenty of people that had a background in psychology that were coaching, but similar to you, I'm going into coaching training and I'm the youngest person in the room. And I didn't get to the heights in my corporate career that a lot of people get to before they make the decision to go, all right, well, now I've learned enough and I'm going to go and coach. So for me, it was this identity and imposter piece that was probably the biggest personal development that I had to go through, and it lasted a long time.
I think that's a very relatable concern, I continue to mastermind, I continue to get coaching myself. And, I'm often talking to people who have played in the NBA, Mm-hmm. They've had like these really incredible and frankly somewhat unrelatable to me life experiences that it's like, well, of course you're qualified to be an amazing high performance coach. I mean, you're elite. You've done all of these things. And so I found myself like really ready to give credit to people who had done really impressive and amazing things. And I struggled with giving myself credit, and it wasn't until a few years ago I was chatting with one of these coaches who was just starting out, just kind of figuring things out. And it hit me and I'm like, oh my God, I figured all of this stuff out already. And there was just like this click moment and I was like, I'm not a beginner anymore.
Well, yeah. And I think that's a good point, right? Like, time is going to pass either way. Mm-hmm. And if you just stay in motion and you keep showing up and you stay committed to doing the work, then eventually that time is going to pass. And before you know it, you're going to have that moment where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, like I remember when I started in this space, like I'm coming from consulting academia background. Like if you asked me to write a lit review, I could do that. I wouldn't even think twice about it. Then I go into a space where it's like you're starting a business in a foreign country that, you've just landed in. I'm like, what am I thinking? And then digital marketing, which I knew nothing about. And I'm like, I look back now and it's only been 4 years. And I'm like, I knew nothing then. Now, I'm like, I don't even know how I know as much as I know about this stuff, but it happens because you stay in the process.
You gotta stay in the game.
And
Yeah,
exactly. And I think it's interesting. I remember there was statements that people said to me that changed, like just helped me shift how I kind of thought about things. I was really frustrated one day because it was that sense of how can I help people that I haven't got to the level they got to? And my husband just looked at me. He's like, have you ever considered that you had to go into corporate and work the years that you did and have the experiences that you had, and that you've been gifted the ability to see things that are broken and wrong and where the paradigm just continues to suck. And that perspective is what's going to make you such a powerful coach, because you understand it and you've seen it, yet so many people are going to work and they don't see it and they're trapped in it. I was like, oh, he has a point. And then the second statement was another gentleman who has like built a very, very successful business. He's not a coach per se, he's a financial advisor. And he just said to me, he's like, do you think Michael Jordan's coach played basketball as good as him? And I'm like, well, no, duh. Because if he did, he'd be on the team. He wouldn't be the coach. Like, what kind of question is that? He's like, that's my point. He's like, you don't have to be as accomplished or as successful as the people that you coach. You need to know how to make them get the best out of themselves, to help them have those unlocks. And when he said that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm completely overthinking this coaching thing and I'm so caught up in self rather than focusing on them and just understanding how do I help them get to their next unlock, which with my background, I'm pretty qualified to do, even if I didn't want to recognize it. So it was about then bringing back those identities back in. Lauren the coach can't exist and do the work that she was born to do if I disqualify Lauren the consultant and Lauren the psychologist.
I think that's so powerful. Like, it's so powerful. Yeah. I was saying, I think before we started recording, that, your business is only going to grow as large as you are personally willing to develop. And, just one of the things that I certainly had to learn was my self-talk regarding disappointment. Right. Mm-hmm. So, if, for example, if I had, tried some campaign or tried some endeavor or tried to establish some kind of a relationship and it didn't work out the way that I wanted to, earlier days, my self-talk was just so honestly vicious. Like it was very like black and white, like you're stupid. I used to tell myself I was stupid all the time. And, that the personal growth for me has been like, okay, how do we respond when we make a mistake, or how do we respond when we're disappointed with an outcome? And it was like a lot of, yes, coaching, but also self-parenting and practicing. And to me, like that lesson right there has been far more valuable for me to be able to impart to my clients than, the latest copywriting hook strategy or how to use AI or I teach the systems and I do all of that. But what I see stops people the most is actually how they, to your point, how they treat themselves, how they talk to themselves, and therefore the lens through which they look at others.
Absolutely. I think you've probably had a very similar experience because I'm blessed to know some of your background. Like when you've been in a field that you've spent years dedicating your life to, and you've built that unconscious competence where you can do things without even having to think about them. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a new space and you're not immediately successful and like you don't get things right all the time. And like you're in that space of now having to build conscious competence before you even get to like the level of unconscious competence in a new space. That voice is vicious, right? And I think, from a psychology perspective, it's that cognitive dissonance, right? We hold these beliefs and thoughts about ourselves, but then our actions and the results are different. And navigating that, that inner voice, that inner critic can be so nasty. But I think, when we started our careers, when we started walking as kids, when we fell over, we weren't like at ourselves, like we got up and we tried again. And I think that's what we forget, even if you're the most experienced coach, there's still stuff that you're going to be learning for the first time. You're constantly going to be experimenting with new things. So whilst all the systems and the strategies and the hooks and the marketing is great, it comes back to what I was saying earlier, like if that relationship with self and you're not parenting yourself and you're not talking to yourself and doing that inner work, then none of that's actually going to be as successful as it could be. And I'll actually argue that people who discount the value of the inner work are typically the people I see that are either jumping from career to career because they can't sustain it. And it's the same in coaching. They're the ones that have a business that within a few years, they're burnt out. Because there's no heart and soul in all, like, I love systems and I love all that stuff, but the heart and the soul is the person. And if you don't get clear here, then you're not going to be clear with clients. So all the systems and all that doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, the systems speed up something that's already working. And if you're not already doing the work of connecting with people, why bother putting $1 or an hour towards a single system? You know, it's you've got to really be connected at a deeper level. And, you know, you were kind of reminding me of some really valuable coaching I actually got earlier this year. We were just catching up, you and I, about, you know, how long has it been? And I'm like, it's been like 6 months, because I have been really focusing and doubling down. And part of that came from like a coach who said to me, Amanda, you're just not good enough yet. And he was like the first person who like helped me with that. I loved what you just said, that dissonance of like the expectation that because I'd worked hard, or because I'd been here for years, or because I've been da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and I was wanting this like outcome that wasn't coming. And he just straight said to me, Amanda, you're just not good enough yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
The yet.
Right. And for some reason, the way that he said it, I could just hear it. But it was kind of that, like, to me, that's a sign of a really good coach that's like willing to tell you the truth and help you kind of pop those little bubbles of dissonance that are stopping you from doing your very best work, you know?
Yeah.
So
100%. Like, I've had a tough conversation with one of my, I was doing a discovery call this week, and, I gave an hour of my time, and, I met them where they're at, listen and do all those things. And at the end, and it was one of those moments, right, where I got to viscerally feel my own growth. If I think back to 3 years ago as an early coach, you're like, oh, I've got to land every discovery call. Like, I need this client. And I just sat in this space, I listened, and I'm like, okay, what is truly in the highest service of this client? And I said to them, I'm about to say something loving, non-judgmentally, compassionately. Coaching will help you, but you are not ready for it yet. You actually need more therapeutic support from what you've told me. That's not what I do. And once you've worked on that and you're at a different point, I'll still be here and coaching's still available to you. But being okay, as you said, to me, that is a similar thing. A coach that is willing to say the hard things and challenge. And that's what I look for, not just in a coach, but even in a peer group. We talked about collaborating. And that's something I've been a lot more discerning about in this past 12 months. So who are the people I can surround myself that aren't just going to tell me the sunshine and rainbows, that are actually willing to tell me the hard things that sometimes are really uncomfortable to hear? Because then that allows me to go and do the work where I need to do the work to get the growth and the outcomes that I want. If I'm just surrounded by those people that are kind of always cheering, but never actually go, well, Lauren, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, it's limiting me. And I think you said it beautifully, rising to the level that we do the work on ourselves. I say a similar thing, we can only rise to the level of our limitations. And half the time the limitations are what we put on ourselves, or, the environment we're putting ourselves in and what we're hearing. And so I think like that coach gave you a beautiful gift, because if they weren't willing to say that, what would have changed?
I think that's it, is that I actually have had like a lot of coaches. It's all the same thing. And they just didn't have, either the awareness or the courage to say it just very plainly like that is very understandable. And like in that instance with the discovery call, you were practicing a principle that we hold really dear in our company, which is responsible influence. Coaching is a influencing position, and the it's not even necessarily just courage to do that. It's also the congruency to just say like, hey, this is something that can help you. It's not right now, or it's not right with me, or here's what I would authentically recommend as the next best step in this situation. I love it. So Lauren, what are 3 things that help a coach not to suck?
One thing that I like, and I've said this word and I'm going to unpack it a little bit, is I think a coach that doesn't suck is a coach that's able to discern. They're able to discern for themselves when they're in integrity, when they're showing up and practicing their values. They're able to discern what's in alignment for them. And I think that'd probably be my second piece. So I'll touch on that in a little bit. But that's been one of the most profound lessons I've had. Like, I thought I was good at discerning, but the longer this journey goes on, that ability to discern in every possible way, in every context, in every relationship, is what's going to enable you not to suck. I have other coaches that I collaborate with, and they get a little frustrated because they'll use terms. And I'm like, okay, let's separate that. You're talking about 2 different things. Let's discern them as 2 different things. And it's frustrating, but to me, that's where a lot of my unlocks have happened as a coach. It's also where a lot of my clients get a lot of unlocks, is when we can take all the smush that you're putting in all together and actually be able to tease it out and start making things distinct. That's a very nerdy technical answer. My second thing is alignment. And I kind of touched on it. Like, when I was early in the piece, it was and I'm a recovering perfectionist, so it was always about trying to do things perfect. And the further things have gone on, I've realized that alignment's actually more important than perfection. Mm-hmm. And again, I hate the word alignment because it's become a buzzword, but I have had people that just shook their head at me like, what are you doing? That's not the way you're supposed to do things. Telling me do a 10-minute discovery call. I'm like, Lauryn Girgenti could not do a 10-minute phone call even if you paid her. It's just not me. I'm someone who gets on the phone. I say hello. I smile big. I want to talk to you. I want to know the story. So I'm like, I'm doing an hour for a discovery call. That doesn't make good business sense. I'm like, well, just because it doesn't make good business sense and it's not the perfect way to do it based on someone else's blueprint, it makes sense for me, and it's in alignment with who I am, how I want to show up, and how I want to build a business. And so that would be the other thing. Have the ability to work out what is the best reflection of you and what you're trying to build, and have the courage to actually focus on what's in alignment for you rather than perfecting what someone else says you should be doing. That's when my business had an unlock. And I'm very, very lucky. I have a business that currently all 100% referrals. So my going deep on building the relationships has served me really, really well. Transacting, doing 10-minute calls, I don't think I'd be doing as good. And then my third piece, and again, it's so cliche, but the work on yourself is never done. There is no destination with it. It is a journey, and I think the biggest shift for me, everyone in my professional and personal life said this. I've always been someone that's done all the extracurriculars and the professional development, but when I actually invested in personal development and actually exchanging money, not just reading the book off the shelf, but putting myself in the rooms where that was the conversation. I had to meet some versions of myself that I didn't necessarily like, but was necessary for me to step into that next version, not just as a person, but as a coach. And that's when everything changed. So that'd be my 3 things.
Those are amazing 3 things. And just, not that you need the validation, given that your whole point was about seeking your own alignment. Anybody who gives you a quick cocktail napkin answer of, oh, you just do this in business is still playing at business, and so just for gentle reader, as you are considering, should I have a 2-step process? Should I have an application? Should I do a 1 hour? Should I do a 45 minutes? That's a big fat it depends, and a very good reason to set up a call with me to figure out what actually does work that is scalable for you and your particular style. And what you just told me about all of my businesses come from referrals, that means you have a perfect process because it's working amazingly, And I think when people say oh, that doesn't make business sense, that's injecting an insecurity that's not even needed or necessary and is generally in service of the person's ego or their lack of awareness of what all the different options are for business, because there are so many ways to approach the relationship and the initiation of it and the cultivation of it and the sales process. And that's what kind of makes it fun. But I love that you brought up that example, because
I think
people waste a lot of time looking for the right answer and the silver bullet.
Well, exactly. And I think, people can tell when you're not doing things in a way that makes sense for you. Like, I know that people would not resonate with me. I would not be potent on a call if I did a 10-minute call. It's not that I wouldn't be the same, like, lively, talk with my hands, la, 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 but people would feel like a harsh cut. They'd feel rushed. There'd be an energy alignment that is not the same as when I just give myself the permission to do what I know I do best and work from that place. And with business, you're right. Like, there are so many ways to do things. And I think that's, if I was to add 2 extra things to my list of 3, the ability to critically think and the ability to experiment and not become complacent. So yes, my process works right now, but I'm never going, well, that's it. I've just found the magical process and I'm going to keep doing this. No, I'm always thinking about, how do I need to improve? How can I make this better? How can I do things differently that adds a better value for my client or a better experience?
Exactly.
To me, complacency is not an option, and experimentation is actually what business is.
1,000%.
And for me, that was hard because I was that perfectionist. It's like, I want to do it right, and I want to do it right the first time. Business and personal development has taught me, you've got to get way better at just sitting in the space of constantly experimenting, getting the data, and then making the best decision you can at the time. In mind, when you're making those decisions, that vision you have of what you're trying to build. And I think that's the other piece is, are you building transactions or you're building a business? Because when I think about a business, I'm trying to build something that I can sustain, build a legacy out of, impact people, change lives. That's not each transaction might build a business for people, but can you sustain it?
And that's exactly it. And I love this point because, there was a season where I was doing 2-hour-long discovery calls and I met everybody in person, and it was a very manual endeavor, at one point in my business. And then there was another point in my business where I was running, several thousands of dollars of ad spend in a week. And we did have a 10-minute call protocol, and it was a 10-minute call that went to, a longer one, but the process kind of shifted based on the difference in the context. And, I would never personally started with the 10-minute call thing and running a whole bunch of ads, but getting back to the NBA player who has some capital to set aside, they can go ahead and hire an agency right away, so that's why all the decisions are so unique. Lauryn, what is the best way for people to follow you and to catch up with you?
Yeah, okay. So if people want to follow me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, so you'll find me there under Lauryn Girgenti. Otherwise, for Laurintium, we're online at www.laurintium.com, and then you can also follow us on socials on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn.
Amazing. And we'll make sure to include the links in the show notes below this episode. And hey, Lauryn brought it today. So do be sure to leave a 5-star review of the podcast. And that helps people to discover the podcast and to find out that it is good for them. And if you found anything really helpful in today's episode, go ahead and forward this on to 3 of your friends so that they can benefit from this conversation about authenticity and what it takes to not suck as a coach. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for coming, Lauryn.
No, thank you so much for the invite and having me. This has been incredible.
Amazing, amazing. Don't forget to subscribe yourself, listener, and we will see you on another episode. Okay, don't be mad, but it says starting and it says it's recording. So let's do this. If this did not save, are you open to me rescheduling? We seem to be having all the techie fun. I think
mine says it's 99% uploading. So
I know, but I'm trying to hit stop and it won't actually let me. So I'm going to do this.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hit stop now.